Welcome back, everyone. So today I want to take a look at the Anvil Liberator. So just a noting of the time frame. Right now we're in the ending of quarter one of 2025. We're not quite there, about a week away from the ending of quarter one. Just for a reference point, I mean, this ship won't probably come out in 2025. That would be great if it does. But more than likely, someone will see this a year, maybe two, hopefully not more than that later, and hopefully Liberator will be out before then. At any rate, if you do see it, just seeing the 1 year ago or something like that video release, I think it'd just be good to have a good time frame for this. That being said, let's get into it. There are a number of things I want to note as far as the tech pieces of this or the technical specifications. So this is announced originally in IE of 2951, which is October of 2021. That would be the meat potatoes of the video here. I think it's about a 30-minute segment. I do plan on putting in notes here for some of the different segments here. The original War Bond pledge was $500 War Bond, and that's no longer really available because that was the original release time frame. That being said, now it is a standalone of $575. It is time limited, so it is only available typically around IAE or an Invictus. However, you can upgrade to it. So I would definitely recommend, if you're interested in this ship, this is one of those ships I would look to upgrade to with the CCU chain, if possible. It is not hull limited, so it's not something that is sold only in limited quantities. It is openly available, but again, it's only time limited to those particular sections, usually Invictus and IAE. It is a large craft. I consider it like a sub-capital type of ship. We'll see that later on when we take a look at Star Jump, sizing-wise, how it looks compared to some of the other large ships, but it's not considered a capital class. It is meant to be a light carrier or transport, and it'll talk about some of the different landing pads and things, configuration for it. It's meant for a crew of 1 or 2. So just a small crew of up to 2 is great. Obviously, there'll be more people. You see a lot of people here. These potentially could be folks that are going to be a part of the crew and could sit with the jump seats and stuff that are on here, or they could just be coming along to support their own craft that you're transporting for them. But again, I talked about before a little bit about the jump seats. We'll take a look at those later, but there are 16 total jump seats. Cargo, there's going to be 400 SUs of dedicated cargo. We'll take a look at that. Weapons, there's going to be dual size 5 man turret, one dual size 5 man turret, and then there's these PDCs that are available. So there's going to be 2 of these dual size 2 PDCs. There should be probably one here. I mean, here's one on, obviously. The other one I think might be on the bottom, and these should meant to be automated. So, and as you can see, it looks to be ballistic to me. There's also going to be a bespoke size. Actually, it doesn't talk about the size. I've seen size 4 and I've seen size 3, but there's going to be 4 bespoke missile racks with bespoke missiles, and then there's also going to be a size 2 tractor beam. Now, it's meant to have a nice long range setup to it. Now, it's not going to be like the longest range possible. The Q&A will cover that, but the capital ships will have a longer range. But just given its current size, for its size category, something against like the Carrack, it's going to have pretty good range comparative to all the other large ships. That being said, all things equal, it's definitely going to have a huge quantum drive compared to the smaller craft that it will be carrying or will be transporting. Cargo capacity, again, we talked about before, 400 SCUs. So it's hard to say if these 2 sections are just going to be dedicated for 200 each, or if, because you see other boxes laying around in this capture here, if there's going to be, side sections for maybe 32 or 16 SCU containers, and this is maybe just 100 between these 2, and then there's maybe another 200 throughout the ship here. Who knows? But there is at least going to be dedicated sectioning for 400 SCUs of lockable cargo. Weaponry, again, we've already kind of talked about that, but you have your man turret here, 1 of the PDCs here, and then there should be 1 probably on the bottom as well, I suspect. I love to see this little guy here trying his heart out here against the other ships. I don't know why this guy, and there's a couple of these pictures too in the video where these different artworks, they'll have 1 guy on the top here. I don't know how this guy got up here. I don't think there's any indication that you'll be able to walk on these particular areas here. Obviously maybe you can spacewalk out there once you're not on gravity, but I don't know what this guy's up to. He's really, maybe he's got a railgun, he's just really feeling frisky. Also, you can see the shielding here a little bit. They will talk about this during the Q&A, but it's obviously covering the C8 down here, which is another thing of note, is that not only can snubs fit on this one, particular snub, extra small pad, but it looks like even some shuttlecraft might be able to fit up here. And then you have the Hurricane lifting off here, so it's good to see the Hurricane. Don't know how much room there's going to be if the Hurricane is fully covered here or not. But you see there's a little bit of elevation here on the the height for the shielding that will cover some of the craft that are sitting up here. And they cover that a little bit more in the Q&A. That being said, let's take a look quick. So the other captures here, you can see as it's landing, the ship can, people can come off here as well as vehicles, because you've got a ramp up front here. There's also a ramp on the back for loading up craft. I guess if you wanted to have people come out the back too, that would make total sense as well. So maybe have a couple vehicles coming out the front and maybe a couple coming off the back side here. Additionally, here's the layout. So up here, you can see this is this little section here for reference. So this is the front of the ship. This is the back of the ship, the front ramp and the rear ramp. But this section up here up top is going to be this section here where the pilot and its little second person crew will be working. And then they'll have access along here. There's landing pad access up here as well to get to the two extra small landing pads up here that we'll see in the next. Actually, I don't think we'll see it in the next picture, but you have to use your imagination. It's this section up here. So there's a little door here, essentially. That's what this is. And then here's the man turret here, right? So here's the man turret. Here's this little section here that we're looking at. This is the other side. So this section over here was originally intended to just be for non-crew, aka those that are being transported. Here's those jump seats. You can see 8 jump seats on each side. So 16 total jump seats. And then kind of some storage and stuff like that available for people that are not technically the crew. But I think the idea of these different folks riding this ship that are not part of your org and stuff like that I don't know how much that's really going to occur. But it's possible that it could be something like a ferry service that could be occurring here. Again, down below you have that extra cargo. This is another snapshot where, you didn't see this little bridge before. So this is below even that level. And you have a couple different lifts as well, and you can see those lifts here, and even at the cargo section here you can see where that lift drops off here. So interesting layout here, and again, engineering making up a larger portion of the back. There'll be other pictures where originally there were crew quarters and stuff like that, but that's all changed for a bunch of engineering space in the middle here. And then again, this is a lot of the same stuff that they had access to on this picture here, where you have the ability to just kind of looks like there's a armory access here. So there's kind of an armory tucked in here somewhere. But I guess that room's not being showed, but right here should be an armory, which is interesting. Here's a one of the dock. I guess there's 2 docking collars because they show a docking collar on. Oh, maybe they don't. Maybe I just misunderstood where it was originally. And again, I don't know if that's standard. So as we go here, we'll take a look at that because this will cover that docking collar. But you can see here a back entrance. There's the man turret as we talked about before. You have the landing pads for extra small, so 2 extra small landing pads, and then you have a snub one up front here for an extra small. You have a cargo hold, which is dedicated on that side there, and then you have the automated PDC here. There's one of them. I think there should be one on the bottom as well, if I'm not mistaken. There's a cockpit that we looked at, and then there's the ability for coming on and off the ship there, and then there's missiles on this side as well, and I think those are probably going to be pilot-controlled missiles. And then there's the docking collar. So yeah, it is on it's on the passenger side. I didn't realize that before when I was first doing this first cut. Anyways, so here again are some of the stats. I wanted to take a look at the Anvil lineup, but it just takes so long to go through all of that. So I just want to note that the Paladin supposedly is currently in works. I believe it's in works. They actually haven't really confirmed that. But if the Paladin is in works, which I believe it is because they've already done some updates to the Valkyrie, if the Paladin is in works, which I believe it is, it's going to be potentially released this time next year because that's going to be about 18 months from when it was announced. It was announced at the end of 2024. So potentially we may see the Paladin this time next year in 2026. If that's the case, I would love to see the Anvil Liberator come out by IEE next year because that would give them the ability to use some of those assets. They do mention the video that they were working with the contractor initially, so there should be some other assets there mixed with they already have the Carrack. They were recently working on that, the Terrapin. So they've been working on a few Anvil ships they just hadn't really noted as Anvil as a really key for them, but they have been working on Anvil ships recently a lot. I mean, they've got the Hornets they've all been working on, the Terrapin, we've got the Valkyrie rework, got the Carrack rework a little bit. Rework is a strong term. Updating, touching up is probably a better terminology there, besides a rework. And so we do have a lot of the work with quite a few of these different ships. So they have been working with Anvil stuff. Would love to see the Anvil Liberator come out relatively soon so we could put them to work because I do think if we look at the idea of what the Liberator can bring to the table, the idea of these fighters being able to jump and QT jump and use the wormhole and stuff like that they're currently doing, I think is out of touch of the original vision. And there's a large meme around people saying, "Hey, do you have an escort?" Well, I think there also needs to be a new meme where, how did you get here? Because you need to be, were you brought by a carrier? Because that is really what was originally intended. So let's get next into, well, we'll take a look at the loaner ship here. So if you do get the Liberator, you get a hold of the Hercules Mark II. All right, Mark II. I keep doing that. The Hercules M2, which is really meant to be a ground transport or vehicle transport, if you will. It's not really meant to carry ships, but it can fit snubs. And I did recently see a video where recently the Drake Golem is supposed to be coming out soon. It's not out yet, but here in the next couple weeks or so, by the end of Q1, it'll probably come out. So that's something that could fit in here as well. Those ships that are snub / maybe like the size of a shuttlecraft, something of that nature. And then you also get the old Super Hornet. You don't get the new Mark II. Currently, as of this video, you get the old Super Hornet. Maybe that will be updated in the future. Anyways, let's get into the CitizenCon. All right, so again, this is the CitizenCon 2951 ship talk. They already covered the 400i because I guess this was released at the same time. They're going to talk about the Anvil Liberator, and at the end, they're actually going to talk about the Banu Merchantman. So a good video to check out if you're interested in those ships. Again, the 400i is already out, so maybe you can skip that part. I will put the timestamp link as well where the Anvil Liberator starts. Here we go.
So we'll move from the 400i to something a bit bigger. And something entirely new, which is the Anvil Liberator, which is Anvil's latest design spaceship, which is purely for transporting ships. So we wanted to do something properly and sort of provide that entry-level spaceship for that career. If you want to be a ship hauler, then this is the ship for you. It provides that good foundational base for it. It's fairly...
Yeah, so this is where next we'll go into a little bit of the current lineup for Anvil. So you can see that's kind of what they had currently. Maybe the Carrack should have been out, so I'm surprised that Carrack's not shown in here. And then we'll talk a little bit about the pads. But overall, they go a little bit into design language as well. So we'll take a look at that. Here's that kind of concept and design language. I'll increase the size here so you can take a look at that. This is what they kind of, just like you see here with the Gladiator, you have this kind of overhang with the front nose here, and then large intakes is pretty common as well for you see it with the Gladiator here, and you also see it with the Hornets as well, and you kind of got this radar circular section here, where there's either radar, there could be, in this case, again, there should be a turret, and again, I'd like to see this is where I kind of mentioned the turret, it would be cool to have that come into play there. Yeah, so that's kind of the Anvil, some of the design language as well. But let's get deeper into the design. We're going to go through to kind of discuss the pads here. So here's a look at the pads. I don't really want to... Originally, I showed some of this footage, but I'm not going to do that here. So the challenge here is this red box is the original large landing pad. That has changed. The pads are now different in the hangar. So they have increased the size of those because you can see how close this is. There's not a lot of variance here, at least with the Hercules, and was even worse for the stuff like the Carrack. So there wasn't a lot of leeway. So the original thought here is, how can you get a large ship that will fit in this red box? And they want to get 3 small green boxes, extra small pads, which is what these ships take. They want these extra small 3 of them to appear in this red area. So that's what they're really trying to show here. Obviously these 3 pads wouldn't fit on a Hercules. It's not big enough. So that's where you can try to talk about, how they came up with the original lineup for the Liberator, is to say, how do we get 3 of these pads to get on a Liberator? That being said, you'll see that, the original design of having 3 of these pads was thrown out, and they decided to go with 2 of these pads and then an extra small pad, which is basically a snub fighter or a medium-sized, John will talk about that later, but it's also a medium-sized vehicle, ground vehicle pad. So let's go through here and we'll talk about the design. That's the next piece where they'll talk about what kind of came up as the initial idea behind what is the base design behind the Liberator.
Prince image right at the start, which is of military hovercraft.
Yeah, the American, I can't remember if it's the Navy or the Army.
Yeah, and so that was like, I mean, people will see straight away the correlation between the two and the sort of influence. But it also makes sense, right?
It's a very
functionality.
I'd say it's a very functional ship, isn't it? So, and it feels like say, obviously, the real life version has been made for that function, and this kind of follows suit.
Yeah, definitely. And
So yeah, so the original design here goes along with the landing craft, or in this case, it's an amphibious assault craft that the United States Navy has. It is a Navy ship. The Marines used to be a department under the Navy, but I don't think that's really necessarily the case anymore. I mean, they're kind of seen that way, but I think they're a separate department at this point. I mean, some Marine, some Devil Dog will come in and definitely correct the record here. However, the Navy is the one that actually has this amphibious craft. It's the Marines that utilize it. Because it's kind of like, again, like you see in fleets these days, that you would see in the game, is somebody, you know, they usually consider these fleet vehicles to be a part of the Navy, and you'd have ground forces and stuff like that, which would be something like the Mariners or the Marines that would be a part of these particular fleets. So, yeah, but that's kind of that hovercraft is what, and they'll show more about it as well. But let's start to look at some of the designs here. So up first, we have essentially like a hollowed out Valkyrie, if you will. So I say that because it does have like the VTOLs and stuff that they're mentioning here, but then it's just hollowed out in the middle, and they've just got three areas, kind of like that red, that painting was. This essentially would be the red box. It's smaller than that, obviously, because it's not the whole full. It's not going to take up the whole large hangar pad. But then you've got three of these extra small hangar pads in here. So it is just a flat here, and I like the design of this one. They do iterate on this a little bit, and if they wanted to make a variation of the Liberator, I'd actually be more interested in that ship, possibly over the current Liberator, to be honest. Especially if they can still have the cargo and stuff on one side, and some light crew amenities, and just have the engineering and stuff in the back. So I think they actually could have made something like this work. Here's the second iteration, and you can now see some of that design language when you're looking at the hovercraft that they were referring to. So this is, I think, maybe an older iteration of a hovercraft, and you can see again it's hollowed out in the middle, but you can see it's coming together. It's quite a bit more armored than it was before. So a good iteration here, and then they move on to another iteration, which is more like a flat top carrier, still having some of that similar design language. And you do see this kind of auxiliary tank here. They don't describe it yet. They don't really they mention there's no real focus of this yet, but they will show in the next iteration a little more focus on that. Yeah, but largely a similar design here. I like this one as well, and I like the whole, the deck up here, which is good up and high so the pilots can see. I think good vision here. I would say this is even better than what they currently have. It's a bit frustrating to have, almost what essentially is like this under it's currently, and then trying to be able to see out there. So being up high, that's why carriers have the piloting the way it is because they need to be up high, a high tower, so that you can see aircraft coming in, control those aircraft, and also just be able to see what's going on with the ship and be able to see on each side of it. So we'd like to see this actually more so the way the current design is. Here's another iteration. Again, the tower's up high. I would like to see it even higher because you want to being able to see all this. You have a kind of a radar dome in the back. And then you start to have some more description. So they mentioned this is now a large auxiliary fuel tank, which is good, and it could be used to fuel the vehicles, which makes a lot of sense. They will mention in the Q&A. We'll talk more about that there, but I do like this idea. And then they reference the Terrapin. It's kind of the armoring, right? So now there's an armor around that fuel tank as well, whereas the previous one was really quite open to attack. I don't see any really extra. There's extra armoring over here, but I don't see anything else that stands out as armoring here. It's just you kind of see the fuel tank as being armored here. Additionally, they kind of do this snub one, and we talked a little bit about the hangar sizes. So the challenge here, and part of what John has said, I like the layout of this one, but what John is noting here is that, in fact, the height here it looks good, but it's not, because this fighter here, this Gladiator, this bomber, is 6.6 meters tall. So you can see there's not a lot of clearance here. So unfortunately, and that 6.6 might include the back here, which we're not even able to see. So it's pretty close to skimming the top there. So this is, maybe 7 meters, maybe upwards of 9 meters. So it needs to be the height for the extra small pad, the Z on it, or that height meter range is 12. So it actually would need to go up at least 3 more, maybe even upward as high as 5 or something. So it needs to go up quite a bit. So it would be quite a bit taller than it currently is to account for extra small pad that's under here. So a cool idea, but unfortunately it would need quite a bit of redesign here in order for this pad. So it would look kind of weird. It would look more like a spoiler, if you will, on a car. And then you'll see an adjustment here to the end all, which is what they've kind of gone off as, obviously we don't have the auxiliary tank here, but this more or less is the basis behind what they landed on, which is, again, 2 extra small pads, and then you have really what's essentially 3 extra smalls that run along here, except 2 will be in the garage and 1 will be on the outside. And again, that's where we saw that C8R out there before. So you could put a snub fighter in there. You can also just put 3 snub fighters. Honestly, more would fit. You know, if you wanted to get ferries in here, you could probably get them stuff like maybe side by side, like these tanks. You could probably get a good amount. I don't know if it would even be, I mean, at 9 or 8 would feel pretty comfortable. I think maybe even upwards of 12 or more. So it would be interesting to get a little carrier fleet going on with snub fighters in here. Yeah, so that's where they leave off with the original design there. And this is really the first iteration. So next we'll talk a little bit, or we'll go next over to where they're going to discuss on the pads. So I'll actually let them take it from here and let John discuss how they came up with the pads.
Actually, like an official feature.
Yeah. It was around this point where we were looking at the double layer thing and trying to get these 2 layers to work, or 2 floors to work with the 3 larger ships. So we changed it from the 3 extra small pads to 2 extra small pads, which basically take any single seat fighter in the game and some around. So I think a Prospector also fits on there.
Yep.
And then we scaled the front one down to an extra small. So that's things like the Argo MPUV, Origin 85X, and smaller flying ships like that. But also, interestingly, that extra small metric is sort of the same as the medium vehicle metric. There's like a meter difference in height, which is the Ballista and Nova. So we went from these 3 extra smalls to 2 extra smalls on top, 1 extra small at the front, and then these 2 garage slots, which can also, if you're willing to try and fly your small ship in there.
You were playing around. You could fit quite a few combinations of ships in there.
I had a shot. I treated it like I was a fan and basically filled that whole carriage.
There was no sort of like door opening space at all. It was
it was Cyclones and
we know what
Rock
the players
DSs.
are like.
Yeah, I mean, it looked good. I mean, it looked like it looked like a ferry. When they're just full of the vehicles all just stacked up.
Yeah, so Paul goes into this a little bit. So this is Paul, this is John, and this is Ben. So Paul here goes a little bit into how he was playing with the garage area space. However, he only talks about ground vehicles, which is a little disappointing. I'd like to have heard other snub fighters and possibly even small fighters. So we're at the time right now where they just released the Drake Golem. So you have these ships that are snub or maybe not even quite snub that might be able to fit in there. Even something like a Prospector might be small enough to fit in that bay. Would love to hear more about that. Obviously, we probably won't see that until we actually see it in game and have a chance to really get our hands on it and try it out, because they don't really confirm that here. All he's confirming is that a bunch of vehicles will fit in there. But I think that garage area is, most people I think want pads for ships, not really vehicles. It's just on those things where expectations versus reality. The expectations from the developers is that there'll be this heavy use of ground vehicles, but the reality is that's not the case. It's not currently the case, and I don't think it'll ever necessarily be the case, given that the ground vehicles have a rough time with the terrain. There's a lot of collision issues with the ground, the rocks and stuff like that. So when you have a ship, why do you want to use a ground vehicle? So I don't know. It's just the expectation versus reality. Again, there's a misalignment here. So would love to see, maybe if Liberator even needs to get bigger, a lot more focus on the ship part, because that's what people want, is a ship carrier. I don't think there's a big appetite. And if there's a big appetite for a ground carrier, then people can get the M2. I think that they should differentiate the two. But anyways, in the current design, it is based around transporting ground vehicles, so there is going to be that as well. I do want to note in this video, if you take a look at the spot of 21 minutes and 50 seconds, Paul does mention there is a contractor they were working with all of this. So it's possible that a lot of this may need to change. So hopefully they have a lot of that work and they have it stored somewhere and they can maybe retweak it if need be. But it sounds like they were working with a contractor previously. I was going to let that audio run, but I decided to skip past it. Up next, we're going to take a little look at the crew piece. So if we skip ahead a bit here, we do have discussion around the crew.
2 crew, you have obviously the person flying the thing, and then the second person who can either, sort of a flexible role. There is a turret that they can control. They can go sit in it and shoot anything that comes at you, but it's not really a ship that's a combat ship. It's a transporter ship. If you want protection, you need to bring protection with you, or rely on the ships that you're carrying to provide that protection, which is another benefit of this open-topped ship is
you can just
you come under
launch.
attack,
Yeah.
everyone can launch out straight away. You're not having to fly your ships out one by one out of a tube. They can get off pretty quickly.
We haven't done launch tubes yet, have we? One day.
One day
One day.
we do launch.
Yeah, so the joke's a little bit about launch tubes. So that kind of reminds me of like Battlestar Galactica, where I think they launch the fighters through a tube and then they have a recovery flat top for recovery. I don't know when they'll do that or if they really will. They're kind of joking about it here, but so far that's not something that's currently offered in the game. That being said, John's kind of comment about combat is a little concerning, but because I do see this as a military ship. I mean, I think that's what it's being sold as, is my understanding. They do talk about it being like a military landing craft. That amphibious vehicle that we talked about earlier with the Navy has, it's not meant for hauling around your Toyota sedan. It is meant for military amphibious assault landings, and it is it has those kinds of things necessary for the defense of such amphibious landings of both people on it, as well as the defense of the craft itself, as well as it has other craft. So I get what he's saying there. Obviously, you don't want to just launch those amphibious craft and then expect them to make it to where they need to go. Sure, they have bigger fleets with them, but I do think the idea that it can't take on combat at all is hopefully a little bit taken. Obviously, you don't want to take this straight into combat. You want to have this in the back line for support. You want to be able to send it out, let the craft launch, and then again return to the back line or wherever it is that you want to go. That would be an area for supporting. That makes total sense. But the idea, obviously, it can't just go into combat and be running and gunning alongside with the other combat craft. I don't expect that of it, but I do expect it to be able to take a hit. If for whatever reason it needs to move in and allow craft to land back on it, I expect it to be able to take a hit or two while it's doing that and can do recovery and then make its way back out alive and then do repair on itself and the other craft that it needs to do in order to get back into the fight. So let's take a next look. They're covering that. Now they're going to go into the interior. So let's move on here into the discussion around the interior.
Learning going on, so now it's like, okay, if I'm a player, what experience do I want?
Yeah.
Like, how do I get from A to B? I don't want to do A to G to H to...
Yeah, so we're having different interior looks here. I don't want to skip over them too much. So here's kind of the first iteration of a layout for the interior. I was going to let Paul kind of describe this, but just you can kind of thumb through these here. You have the B variant here, where again you see the engineering room. So a lot of the same stuff works out. It would have been kind of cool to actually see this. So this is all engineering now. The engineering is just, I don't know, for me it seems way too big because this is all engineering at this point when we take a look at the current. But this idea of sleeping areas would have made more sense, or maybe even showed up front if there was room for it. Would love to see a medical bed in here. That's something that's missing. I would love to see it. Obviously, they don't have to put it, and you can bring a level 3 bed with you, or possibly a Terrapin with a level 2 bed. It's just unfortunate that I would really like to see a medical bed along here. Here's that man turret, right? And then so you can see some ship components and stuff like that. So again, this is another potential layout, but it's not a finalized one. Here we are with more of a finalized view. So this is the same one we saw on the kind of marketing page for the Liberator. So I think this is, and again, this is where they had some of those beds before. You see it's all engineering at this point. So I don't know what these tubes are for, but this is all engineering at this point. And then you've got components spread out in other areas as well. But a lot of storage. You've got 16 jump seats, again, 8 on each side that we talked a little bit about before. So plenty of room for friends, and then they can make their way out. There's suit lockers, things of that nature. Excuse me. And then you have all kinds of other things. You can get to the landing pads from up here. You'll see there's other garage access later on. Well, here's the vehicle bay access. You can see it here. And then this is the pilot side where we'll see the next picture. It'll reference some of that stuff. Again, I would love to see a medical bed integrated in here somewhere, maybe along with this docking collar, something. Because I think some of the space is just wasted. It's kind of like that in the Paladin too, where I'd like to see a bit of a retweak. Did we skip over it? No. That's pretty much it. We saw the other, the snapshot there. So at the end of the day, this is going to be the final on, actually we will see the reactor at the end here. Let me let him talk.
Whatever it is.
Whatever vehicle.
And then off you go. So I feel like a lot of thought was given to just like improve.
And I think it's really nice as well, the fact that you've got, like say, that passenger section kind of sectioned off and they're always ready. But then, like say, you were saying about like the bows of the ship and how that sort of all that technical stuff's like hidden at the bottom, and that feels nice that that's crew only, and because you don't want passengers,
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah,
just
definitely.
milling around.
And then moving on to, you can see here the garage.
Yeah, so here's the final one. What they were noting there is that previous picture, there's that long walkway. The idea is that this side of the ship is for people that are not the crew, and this side of the ship's more or less for the crew. I don't know if it'll really play out that way. I assume you're not letting just random people onto your ship and then having to access control along that walkway. You have to kind of use your imagination. I mean, I guess I could move back, but all in all, I don't know if that will really come to fruition, but it might. If you're just really transporting people, I really see this as like an org ship, and you're transferring your org mates, or a solo ship and you've got your own industrial ships because you're working on an industrial mission. But anyways, here is a number of things here that is accessible for the people that are technically not the crew. That's what they're talking about, but again, I don't know if that will come to fruition. Here is the top part now, and they're showing this same part that they showed previously, but now you're able to see the overlay of the pilot area, which is right here. Again, the section is so small. It would love to see it up higher so that they can get a full view. So the view on this ship it's going to be pretty bad. You're going to be able to see out front, and that's about it. You don't need cameras or something. Obviously, we have access to a third-party camera, or a third-person camera, thankfully, because we're going to need that in order to see what's going on around the ship. Additionally, you got this hallway here, which again, it's got a bunch of storage lockers. Again, more wasted space. I'd love to see some of the space utilized for. I would love to have a medical bed. That's my biggest thing here. I don't know what else they can add besides, they don't really talk about kitchen stuff. They do show kind of a table here. So hopefully they have a lot of that stuff, those living amenities that we're used to, besides just bathrooms, have some of those amenities that will be usable by the crew. Additionally, you see here's the man turret, and it would be all on this side. So this top part here is just for the crew. It's going to be the most main part for the crew. And then again, there is on these sides, you can see here, these are the lifts. And so as you get down below, it looks like there's the lift exit here. This is going to be the dedicated section, again, that we talked about before, the 400 SCU of storage. There is some area around it. So, parking a NERSA or something like that might be a possibility, especially along these sides. So bringing a NERSA, would allow the medical bed. I would like to see, a terrapin probably be more or less needed because you'll want a longer range medical bed. Anyways, let's go into a little bit on garage and storage. So I'll let them go ahead and discuss that now.
Space and where the cargo is stored. So originally the cargo was going to essentially take up one of the garage spaces.
It was going to be a compromise choice that players could make of that the cargo is stacked down, either down the middle of the lower garage or across like one of the pads, so you could choose. But then decided to.
We had a bit of space. Well, basically, the concept guy went rogue. I was like, "Oh, what about this? This is cool." And we were like,
"Yeah, it does look cool." Yeah.
Yeah, I was like,
John, can we have this?
Come into a meeting. I've just gone away and done this this thing that we're not going to talk about, but it's turned into the cargo storage room. So
yes,
it's a good sort of save of.
Well, we want. I mean, for me as an art director, I want my team to feel like they can take those little forays off if they want, if they've got a good idea. And luckily this time it's panned out.
Yeah.
And makes good use of the space. I mean, because like I said, the ship is quite big. So.
Yeah, so at the end there, they're kind of discussing that dedicated cargo area, originally it was just going to be in that garage there. You were going to have to choose, do you want to have vehicles there or use it as cargo, which I don't know if I mind either way. If they wanted to have a medical section, I know I'm sticking on that pretty hard. If you want to have a modular section there where you can maybe have refining or something, I don't know, use that space besides necessarily, and then have that garage area where if you want to maybe use it as cargo, I'm torn on it, but ultimately they did decide to have a dedicated cargo section, which is great. Definitely a good use of the space. And then down the middle, you'll be able to put your vehicles there. But that being said, there's definitely going to be room if you want to put more cargo in. They just won't be secure probably. I'm assuming those pads will not let you lock the boxes there. So you can definitely get more than 400 SCUs in this ship, but you can at least get a minimum of 400. Getting more than that will definitely be possible. At least in this garage area, you can also stack boxes on the top. So I don't know, it might start to look like the Ironclad, where you can stack boxes around here. It just won't be secure boxes. So up next, obviously this is more or less the finalized version of what we're looking at. And we're going to take a look next at more of a closeout, if you will. So let's let Paul talk a little bit about the marking, and then John will discuss more of a closeout.
Then we get to the fun part, which is when we get onto promo. I think it's everyone's favourite part. involved with this sort of stuff, and that is really sort of, I call it selling the dream. So it's you're really sort of honing in into what a player's experience might be. And I love doing this sort of stuff as well. So here we've got a fully loaded carrier. And
the core of what that ship is for. Like, you have these smaller carrier-borne ships, is what Chris likes to call them. Like, they're not deep space fighters. They can't go long distances by themselves. They need to be from a parent ship. So the Liberator is, unless you suddenly got an Idris to carry things with, this is what you're going to see going through these wide and long star systems. Like Pyro is incredibly large compared to Stanton, and Stanton's already quite big to go from one side to the other. So we really need these ships to help you lug all your stuff from point A to point B, because if you do it in your Hornet, that's going to be, I don't know, 50, 100 little stops, whereas you cram it in one of these and send it on its way. It's going to be a much better experience for everyone.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, so that's the discussion that I think needs to be had. And obviously the smaller ships, the single-seat fighters and stuff, are not meant to be able to get around in any meaningful way. They're meant to go short distances and rely upon a carrier like the Anvil or the Kraken, the Anvil Liberator or the Kraken, or being inside a Polaris or something like that, right? Being a, snub or otherwise, these extra small, and extra small craft need to rely upon a carrier of some sort in order to get around. That being said, I don't want to see the starter ships getting hampered by that, which I guess could include the Arrow, the Anvil Arrow, because it is technically a starter package, but I'd like to see all the starter packages possibly getting a bespoke drive or something, or a bespoke gas tank that allows them to go further than a typical one-seater would go, and then just take a hit on the damage they do or something. I don't want to see people that just getting a starter package getting hampered by the ability to actually get around. So I get where they're currently at, and that's maybe why they've done some differences than what they're describing here. But at the end of the day, I do think that the fighters, especially those that are part of the meta and stuff, they do need to be hampered on how far they can go, because that's the original intent, and that does make sense. In such a small fighter, being able to go pretty far distances, especially in Pyro, is just should not be something they should be able to do, and that was never really the intent. So we'll let John here wrap it up.
Absolutely.
No, I think this is going to be a fun one to kind of get onto.
Yeah, I think your team's going to like that.
That's pretty much it for the Anvil Liberator. Ship transporter at its core, 2-man crew, designed for hauling 3 spaceships and some ground vehicles long distance. Very cool.
That's pretty much it. And we'll go into Q&A and then that hangar link here. I will note, again, this leads into the Banu. So if you wanted to see a little bit more about the Banu Merchantman, you could do that. And then there's newer videos of that as well. So this information might be. All right, so now we have the Q&A. I will also link this in the description. So this is some of the original thoughts. Now, do note that some of these questions are outdated and some of this may change, but this is the original Q&A that was covered. So what sort of capabilities and ships will have for refueling, repair, and rearming? So Liberator was only meant to support basic level refueling, repairing, and rearming. So it's one of those things where, it wanted the players to manually do that, which again makes sense. I'd like to see it better with refueling, and I'd like to see them use those auxiliary pods, but we'll get into that in a later question. But obviously they'll need dedicated facilities for those separate roles. You'll need to maybe have you won't be able to get the Crucible on here, but you may be able to get the the Aegis to fit on here. I can't remember the name of the ship right now. It'll come back to me. Anyways, you might need to have another ship to do repairing, rearming, things of that nature. So the Vulcan, is what I was thinking of. You might need that with you in order to meet all those demands. Again, I hope it has some fueling though, but the repair and rearming is stuff you might need to bring with you, especially in that dedicated cargo section. So, are the ship's decks shielding the... Okay, are the ships on the deck shielded by the Liberator size 3 shields with the new STF shield tech? Sorry, I should have just straight up read it. They're not explicitly protected, however the shields project multiple meters from the ship's hull, so most ships would likely be partially covered, but not entirely. The same applies to the Kraken and other ships. So I guess this was something that was a bit of an update, because originally the Kraken wasn't supposed to cover them at all, so it does appear that the shields will be... projected at least some distance, so if you have a really tall size extra small ship, it might not fit, but if you have a short one, Again, those gladiators that were on there didn't appear to be too big, so it's possible they may be able to fit under the shield. So just note that honestly, you'd probably leave the ships with the shields on anyways, so not a big deal. But just one of those things to note that there's going to be a little bit of leeway there. There should be at least some coverage of the shield on the craft that are brought along with it. What is the largest ship that can be parked on each of the garage? In each of the garages, the upper landing pads and the front landing pad. So again, as we noted before, officially the top pads are extra small, so there's gonna be 2 of those, and those can fit common single seat fighters as well as it does mention the Misk Prospector. And now since then we have the Misk Fortune, so this is keeping me the Fortune in my particular fleet, because this is if I want to be able to take a Prospector and a Fortune out, both of those should fit on the pads just fine. Additionally, it's possible they might be able to fit in the garage, but that's a little bit yet to be determined. Do note that the extra small, the top height on that is 6 meters. So if a ship is shorter than 6 meters, it should be able to fit inside that garage. At that point, it's going to be more of a question of the width of it, which some of the fighters are a little bit too wide, but something like a Prospector doesn't have a big width to it. So and the Fortune, so especially the Fortune, I think the Fortune might even be I don't know. The engines are wide hips there. So however, again, the internal or the one in the front there is a snub. So Argo MPUV, the Origin 85, and we did see the C8 out there as well. So it looks like the C8 should fit in there just fine. And then you can get pretty much your big vehicles should all be able to fit as well inside the garage there. So any of these that fit outside on that third pad should also fit in the garage just fine. Can a Liberator transport one big ship on both its upper decks, provided the latter can touch down with all of the landing gear? Officially, this won't be supported, as large ships won't be able to spawn there. But what players do after the initial spawn is up to them. So we surely play Tetris up there, essentially. So this is also interesting. Spawn here. Ooh, that looks worse with that the way that just colored there. But they don't talk much about this spawning. I have other people mention this as well. So it appears that those small hangars should allow you to spawn a craft up there, which is surprising to me. That would really make it quite interesting if you can spawn a bunch of craft out there. And then keep respawning craft out there. That would make the Liberator really good. I always thought I was excited to have access to ships that you bring along with you. We'll take a little look at this at the hangar link of what medium ships might be able to fit up there or larger. But it's interesting. They kind of note this spawning here, but they don't talk about it too much. So again, I've had people mention that, but feel free to let me know in the comments below if you have some way to link towards a discussion where they say for sure, or maybe I missed it in the video, but when I've watched the video a couple times and I didn't catch where it said that they're going to allow you to spawn stuff there, and maybe I'm just dumb and I missed it. What's the Liberator's armor like comparison to other military ships? So the Liberator has medium to heavy armor, so offset its relative sparse weaponry and allow it to take a beating whilst transporting vehicles. So this is what I was looking for. Again, it's not meant for combat per se, but it is a military craft and it's meant to take a military beating. So this is definitely what I want to see, as well as a good shielding to go along with it as well. Does the 400 SU cargo capacity refer only to the internal cargo bays next to the garage? Is there any limitation in preventing additional cargo from being ferried into the garage or other spaces? I'm assuming only the 400 dedicated area gets mag plates, aka the kind of sticky plates that are used, the official lock-to grid, if you will. The 400 SU refers only to the internal cargo bays, which are the secure areas for cargo. As above, what happens outside of that is up to players. So if you want to pack it full of other stuff, you can, but it looks like we'll definitely have 400 worth of SCU grid that's lockable, but then there'll be room for more boxes. The question is, do you want to be able to, do you want them flopping around in your hangar there or your garage there as you're moving about the verse, which I typically don't find to be a problem. What is the primary use difference between this and the M2? So the M2 is obviously meant largely as just carrying the ground vehicles, which is where, again, I wouldn't even mind if they want to repurpose this a bit and have that garage just meant for, if they could just do extra small across the board and do 5 spots for extra small. Can you imagine how good the ship would be if they repurposed that garage so it had 2 extra small hangars in there, or pads in there as well for those 2, just like they do up top, and then repurpose that front one to be an extra small? That would be 5 extra small pads, which would be so good. So I'd love to see that over the idea of using these extra small and other vehicle pads, but that's what it was sold as. So will there be any consideration to removing the spawn ship requirements when loading your own fleet? So this kind of goes back to an original design where you'd only have 3 vehicles at the time. This really, I mean, it was obviously it's meant as a temporary measure, and it doesn't seem to really be the case anymore. I know I've been able to spawn. I've had issues recently where I can't have a lot of ships in my hangar, but I have noted that I've been able to spawn quite a few ships recently. So it used to be you'd only have 3 ships out at a time. That seems to have kind of gone away when they came out, even before 4.0, when they came out with the hangars. The hangars rework did allow you to park vehicles outside. Additionally, I'm also kind of noting, like, these are mentioned as laser repeaters. I thought these were laser repeaters as well, but it looks like these are going to be ballistics. So it's possible when you're out and about that your PDCs or your automated turrets might run dry. So you might, hopefully they'll have the ammo option where you can rearm by the time this comes out. Are there any ways to lock down ships on the upper landing pads to prevent them from taking off? On the same topic, is there a way to forcibly detach a ship if it's unwanted? So we don't have any specific details for discussing regarding to this topic of security and potential griefing, how it interacts with other ships, but both the scenarios listed here are something we're discussing internally, particularly how we can wish to deal with them using the current planned range of mechanics. So this is an issue for both this ship and the Kraken, because you're going to have a use case where obviously you want your ships to stay intact when you're out flying about, but you also don't want people just to randomly join your ship and take your ship over. The worst thing out on a Kraken is you would hate to see a bunch of people board it and just take it from you, or maybe you're one guy out there by yourself in your Kraken, and then one dude comes up and it's like, it's my Kraken now. So I mean, it is what it is. EDCs could potentially help with this, but in the long run, we'll have to wait and see how it goes with the ability to prevent people from landing that you don't want landed, and vice versa, keeping people on the deck that you want to keep there. That really hasn't been a problem that I've seen. I mean, there was an issue there for a time when you were flying around in the Polaris and a ship would kind of fall out of your hangar, but they do seem to typically kind of get that fixed. Liberator is described as having extreme range. What is it? What does the endurance look like versus the Kraken and the Idris? So it is extreme range, essentially given its particular size. However, the Kraken and the Idris are going to have double the size and have greater range. So it's not like it. They do mention in the marketing material it is really great range, but it's not like it's going to be better than the capital ships. It's just going to be really good for its large category or the sub capital category. So just something of note there. Can vehicles be driven up the ramp door and secured on the upper deck in place of fighters? So this is possible, though not advised. If the ramp door becomes damaged in any way, shape, or form, they won't be able to operate getting it back off. So it's interesting to say, the thought here is that can you put vehicles up here? Well, yes, when this door is closed, assuming that door is there and working, you would just roll down here and write down the same way that you would just drive down here, then drive on this snub vat, and then keep running. But again, I don't foresee a lot of people using a bunch of tanks and stuff up there. They will talk about the tractor beam, so that will become an interesting note as well. But you know how some of these doors can get broken and they'll just be left open. So at that point, you're going to be driving down without any way to actually, ride this ramp. That this door, essentially, they want to use this door as a ramp. They're just noting that that's not necessarily the best idea. Additionally, we'll talk about what are the 2 cylinders on the lateral side of each engine. They just note that they're not functional. So originally in the concept, they were talking about these as being auxiliary tanks. I think they go back to that. I don't know why they're noting that they're not anything special, but would love to see them rework and let them know that they're auxiliary tanks for extra fuel. I don't know why they don't just keep that in the lore. Will the ship be able to traverse jump points? So yes, it's going to traverse with jump points as well as the ships that are on the landed deck. So it goes back to, I almost think that small fighters shouldn't even have jump drives. So would love to see, especially when these kinds of ships come out, you put your fighter on a particular craft and have them take you back and forth. Is the Liberator capital ship as categorized here? So it was originally listed as a capital ship, but that's no longer the case. So as we noted before, it's definitely a large ship. Again, I would consider it like a sub-capital because it does kind of ride that line, but it has no capital components, so it is not a capital ship. Where is the tractor beam mounted? So they do talk about the tractor beam. Tractor beam is located outside on the deployable on the passenger side under the remote turret, upper turret. This allows for the external pads to manage the external pads for removing landed ships. So or putting ships on there. I think that's a really big misplay. Again, that looking here, well, let's look back up here. So it's referring up here somewhere. So having a turret up or a tractor beam turret up here doesn't make sense to me unless it can flip back and forth between down the garage, because you really want you want it for cargo too. Like, I don't know why, or maybe they need to put a second tractor beam in, but would hate to see it just be up here for fairly no use. I don't know. I mean, I guess if a ship's broken, you would want to be able to use it. That's what they're talking about here, but I don't know. I'd much rather see another tractor beam and then maybe use like an MPUV tractor for these ships up here. I'd much rather have the tractor beam down below, is really what I'm getting at. If you're going to have one, have it down there. But if you're going to have two, that'd be nice. Then I don't really have any complaint. Have them on both sides. But if you're going to just have one, put it in the garage. I don't get the point of having it up top. Up next, does the Liberator offer any facilities to house crew of the transported ship or vehicles? So yeah, they will have access to their own dedicated area for the ship, complete with food, storage lockers, storage and lockers, I should say, a bathroom and seating area. So there's plenty of room for people and plenty of room for activities. Again, I'd like to see the room kind of changed a bit. I mean, I don't think they really need to be sleeping there and all that stuff. I'd rather have some medical facilities and stuff like that to better handle issues in the battlefield. When you look at a lot of the new military ships these days, they have some sort of, even if it's a small, kind of like they're doing with the MISC attack, even having a size 3 bed in there or something like that could be really meaningful for ships like this. So I'm not saying it needs a size 2, although I'd really like that. Even a small size 3 bed on here would be really meaningful for what's meant to be a military craft. All right, that about wraps that up. Let's take a look at some of the sizing, and I'll be able to wrap this whole video up. So here's a look at sizing. It's in about the middle of the area here. When you start to look at the Perseus, the Hammerhead, when you look at a Polaris, though, you can see that's a real capital ship versus this. Again, I kind of consider these to be like sub-capitals, where it's just a little bit less than the Carrack here, but it's also bigger than its kind of other relatives here that are Corvette fighting craft. Now's the fun part, is what will fit on it. So we'll play a little game here. I do want to add the Vulcan. So we'll bring that over here as well. So the Vulcan is not a small craft. So it's one of those things where, it was talking about repair and refuel. Let's go into first some of the craft it did mention will fit. So it mentioned the Saber. You can see the wingspan here. It looks real rough, but it's mentioning it should fit, so it should be able to fit. I guess I could bring this out here, and let's do this. Now, I'll leave it the way it was, because a lot of these ships, I don't want to move each one of these ships, but anyways, it should be able to fit here, and the Hornets, it kind of mentions that as well, so the Hornet should be fine, including the Super Hornet is only slightly longer, that should be fine as well. The Firebird has quite a wingspan on it, so I'm not sure if the Firebird should fit, but it should be okay. It might be smaller than the Saber too. And then this is where you talk about a little bit about the snubs. So it said the tractor should fit fine. I brought a Buccaneer out here. It's an interceptor. It's technically not extra small, but it's possible that we might be able to see stuff like a Buccaneer fighter be able to fit there. Fury and stuff like that should all be fine. You should be able to get quite a few on there, to be honest. As well as it did mention stuff like the 85X or something similar to that. So yeah, that little snub bay, again, I'd love to see these pads across the board. Take this door off even and just leave that open maybe. And I don't know, reworking it, I wouldn't mind at all if they just go for really 5 of these extra small pads across the board. Unless this narrows significantly, there should be plenty of room for that, and maybe they just widen this back out. Again, they do mention the Vulture, sorry, the Prospector should fit, so the Fortune should be able to fit as well. The Vulture should be able to fit, but it doesn't mention that, and it was a newer ship when this came out, the Vulture. So I don't know, that front might overhang a bit, so you may need to have it like, let's say in the back, maybe park it backwards. I don't know if the Vulture is going to fit, but they have mentioned the Prospector should fit, so therefore by that terminology and by that the logic, the Fortune should fit as well. Legionnaire, as I mentioned before, there's currently no dropship that will fit on any of these ships and be usable by a crew. And so, again, having Legionnaire in here and being able to use it in something like, I don't know how tall it is, so there might be a height factor problem with the Polaris, but it should be able to work on something like the especially how high this up, so that, it should be pretty front heavy with its landing gear. There shouldn't really be anything going on in the back. So this Legionnaire should be able to be usable on the Liberator as well. So looking forward to that. So if you wanted to have ground incursions, you could do that. Mantis, a single seat fighter, so there shouldn't be any problem here as well. So if you want to have that capability of adding extra support. Terrapin, I also feel like the Terrapin should fit. Man, the Terrapin's looking so small, it might fit on the snub spot. I don't think it will. That'd be wild. Or it might be able to fit inside as well. The Terrapin does fit inside of the Idris. So it is possible that might be able to fit, and but we'll see. Now let's go to the mediums before we go to the larges. Again, the Vulcan. I'll have to look that. I didn't look the stats up for that. Obviously, I didn't even have it on this sheet originally to take a look at. Would love to see. Actually, let's turn these two because I want to. That's looking good. Man, I would love to see the Vulcan. I own the Vulcan as well. That's meant to be my support craft. It's a military craft, so would love to see the Vulcan be able to come along. Can it fit inside? No, probably not. But outside, would love to see it out here to be able to support the fight. So if I had to bring a Liberator, maybe I bring it with only support type craft. Maybe I don't know. If I don't really plan on getting a second Vulcan, and I don't think two would fit anyways. But having one sticking out the back here, and then bringing something else, maybe a medical terrapin as a spawning point for people, something of that nature to really bring a good support package, and then maybe snub fighters in here for people to respawn and take out the snub fighters. When you look at something like the MSR, not probably going to happen. It's a thick boy, right? So I don't think that's going to happen here. When you look at the Corsair, I don't think they have a landed one here, but this might be able to work. It depends on how much those engines stick out. Again, if I turn this and I turn this, yeah, it's not looking like it's probably going to work. So unfortunately, I don't think that'll happen. Same thing, the Taurus is a little bit thinner. It's not impossible, depending on how the height is. You might be able to get a Taurus on there, which would be pretty cool. I wouldn't mind, but I don't know if I'd be out with my Taurus. I mean, I guess it would just give me the option to bring the Taurus if it could fit. Bringing the Taurus out, which only has these two landing gear, right? So that's another thing that makes it a little bit easier. Assuming there's just enough clearance here, you might be able to get the Taurus on here with some room up front for another vehicle, especially something small like a Terrapin. So you might be able to bring might be able to bring the Taurus with you with a small fighter or something, maybe a Firebird up here. Because again, there's so much overhang with that Taurus. Again, you'll just have to depend upon the shields of the Taurus to do that, but I would love to see the Taurus fit on here. That will increase your cargo capabilities. It would allow you to have your really big ship. I don't know how often I would actually do that, but it would be pretty cool. And again, I could bring, I expect the Golem to be able to fit in here. So you can have a mining craft with you. Maybe you can get something like the Fortune up here and then the Taurus up here. And you can always bring maybe a nurse or something like that. I didn't really show ground vehicles here. I was just interested to see what would fit on top here. The Valkyrie, again, I'm thinking too wide, but maybe. Let's see. Yeah, I'm thinking it's just too wide, right? I got big hips on it. I don't think that will happen. Redeemer, a similar situation. I think it'll be too wide, to be honest. So I don't think the Redeemer would work. It's possible, but I just doubt it. And then finally the Paladin, again, because of the Valkyrie being too wide, this actually looks bigger than the Valkyrie, which surprised me. They're a little closer than I thought they were, but it looks wider. So if I change this, maybe it's not. Maybe it's just my imagination. But yeah, I think since the Valkyrie's too big, I think the Paladin will be as well. Sorry, I went into the large ships there when I really went to focus on the mediums, but I wanted to get those out of the way. So here are with the SRV. Maybe the SRV can work. I think this is going to be another situation where how wide and what clearance are we going to look at? Having an SRV along with the Vulcan could be a nice combo. I currently don't have... Where did I put the Vulcan? Here it is. I don't currently have the SRV in my fleet, but if it could work on this ship, I can see adding it to my fleet to bring along a ability to tow someone back and then do some repair and rearming on it. Raft, I don't know, I just kind of brought it out here just to see, but I don't think that'll happen. The Sulin, this is interesting. I just landed, but it looks like it might actually fit, the Sulin, which kind of surprised me, but it's probably too wide. But I just thought it'd be interesting to kind of take a look at that. Not that I would necessarily bring the Sulin along with me, but it's something I'll try out. The Cutlass Black is looking too thick. It just is what it is. Let's turn it to the side here, or the front view. Yeah, it's just looking a little bit too wide. It's hard to say. It's possible that, again, with these rear engines and stuff, if there's enough clearance back here, I don't think so, though. I'm not thinking this will work. I think that's even more unlikely than the Taurus is. Actually, let me bring the Taurus. Did I do this with the Taurus? Yeah, I think I did. Yeah, so there's going to be a factor of how tall does that clearance going to be in the back. So anyways, where did the Vulcan? I just wanted to kind of note that. The Vanguard looks to be too wide as well, but it's possible. I know the wings do kind of come back a bit, but I don't think the Vanguard's going to work on here. Similar situation with the CL, although I didn't look at it from this angle. Let's take a look. Yeah, it's looking too wide. It's got the wide hips in the back, so I'm not thinking that's going to work. Same thing with the A1. I think it's just going to be probably too wide. I think the wings come up on this one, but I don't think it'll matter too much. And then here's the Maul. That's part of the reason why I brought the Raft out originally. It's just to kind of see how close it would be. I don't know. That's kind of... It might be... I'm trying to think of the landing gear on this one. No, I think the landing gear is out too wide. The part of the thing about the Taurus is that the landing gear is just these two engines, and they kind of come in and they come towards the middle. I don't think the Mole has that same situation, and it has these pretty hefty. Yeah, I don't think there's gonna be enough lift and stuff like that on the Mole. That'd be interesting to be able to take the Mole out, but honestly, you could take 2 prospectors out. So mining laser size though, yeah, I don't know, but I don't think you're gonna be able to get the Mole on it. But that's a quick look at some of the ships you might want to bring along with you. Again, if it's a single seat, if it's in this size category, essentially a little single seat fighter type thing, it should fit. It shouldn't be a problem. It's going to be these mediums. It'll be questionable. And I think even the Terrapin, I'm not sure. I'd have to look on Urkel to see what the size category is. But anyways, all for catching the video. Thank you all for taking the time to like and subscribe, and I'll catch y'all next time. Peace.